Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to July's BotSoc Plant Conservation Webinar. I'm Rupert Koopman, presenting this on behalf of the Botanical Society. And yeah, today we are going to return to something we've spoken about before, being the succulent poaching challenge, but also we broadened it out to talk about cycads as well. So definitely when I started out in conservation, cycad poaching was the thing. There was limited succulent poaching that was happening. But now obviously that's ramped up quite significantly. However, I think what we wanted to achieve out of this webinar is the fact that unlike what you read in the press, there are actually quite a big advances in the succulent conservation space, almost catalyzed by the uptick in the poaching. So thank you for that and for joining us this evening. As you can see from my attire, it's freezing in Cape Town, and that also does bode well for really good spring displays. So we take it from whence it comes. Right, so I see some of you have already started introducing yourselves in the chat box. So this is how we're going to run things. Please tell us where you're joining us from, and then we've also got the Q&A section, question and answers. That's where you want to be putting in anything that you've got as a question to the presenters or myself. And how we run this is we'll have the 3 presentations first. 2 of them are pre-recorded, and then time for questions at the end. So that's how we do. I'm going to ask Emily to put her video on. And that's Emily Kudze, who's the Senior Scientific Coordinator, who's seconded from WWF to SANBI. And at the bottom, Dr. Karina Becker-du Toit, who is the scientific coordinator. Sorry, I'm reading on 3 screens here. So thank you so much. Emily, you've got the rights to share your presentation. So go ahead, and Karina, just relax until we call on you later with all the hard questions. And also, Emily, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, good evening, everyone. Share, there we go.
Cool, your sound is great.
Awesome. All right, so my presentation is going to speak about from confiscations to conservation. There we go. Just going to have a brief introduction, the scale of confiscations being received by SANBI, institution, challenges that we have managing the plants, successful interventions SANBI is leading, as well as future directions and conclusions. South Africa shares the succulent Karoo hotspot with Namibia. 40% of plant species are found nowhere else in the world on Earth except this area. There has been a significant increase in the demand for ornamental succulent trade and unique dwarf succulents that occur in South Africa. The online trade goes from social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, eBay, even Amazon. And most of these are wildly sourced plants and have been illegally traded. As you can see in the photos are the heaps and volumes of confiscations that we've been receiving as SANBI since 2019, where there was a significant rise in seizures of illegally sourced plants. This is a graph showing the total number of confiscated plants received by SAMBI and other institutions since 2019. As you can see, it significantly spiked during the COVID lockdown period. 2021 has been the highest consignment of confiscated plants we've received, but 2023 is looking very much right behind that number. We might supersede 2022's numbers. Currently, we have just under 1 million plants in SAMBI's control or SAMBI institutions, and about 674 species are now being illegally traded online. These are number of species that have 7 species and 2 subspecies have been poached close to extinction since 2020. And SAMBI's ex-situ collections possibly are the ones still having a proportion of the plants. And a big jump is the Conophyton genus that went from 40% of the genus being least concern to about 85% now being critically endangered. The challenges that we are facing for the confiscations is that most of these confiscations come in with localities unknown. It is very expensive to maintain these high volumes. As you can see in the picture on the left, it's just heaps of trays and trays of confiscations. We are building additional greenhouses and tunnels to house these confiscations, but there's also a risk of cross-pollination because we don't have the correct facilities. The picture on the left is just showing how we are overwhelmed by confiscations being received, and we are managing as much as we can, but we honestly do not have enough hands and even knowledge of how to grow and keep these confiscations alive. We've resulted in, with Karina's great creativity, we've resulted in a triage method where, because we do not have space or the capacity, we start taking care of plants that are critically endangered before we get to the least concerned plants. But it's not all doom and gloom. SAMBI has successfully, with the collaboration with about 16 agencies, both state and non-governmental organizations, developed a national response strategy and action plan to address the illegal trade in succulents in South Africa, succulent flora in South Africa. This plan has 7 objectives, mainly from field monitoring to policy and regulation, all the way to developing sustainable economy around South Africa's beautiful succulent flora. Another successful intervention by SAMBI is that we have managed to get 17, the genus Conophyton and 17 other threatened succulent species listed on the CITES Appendix 3 list as of 23rd February of this year, as well as put about 200 plus species of succulents on the endangered IUCN Red List. We managed to source some funding with the help of BotSoc Wilderness Foundation Africa, Conservation South Africa, to get funding from short-term funding from the IUCN Save Our Species grant. This was targeted at additional funding to help field monitoring, as well as establish an ex-situ collection of 36 single locality species, as well as to provide relatively good equipment and small consumables to our gardens in SAMBI. At the bottom picture is the desert, the Richtersveld Desert Gardens that is being managed by Peter van Wyk of Sand Parks. Future directions. SAMBI is investing in a strong ex-situ collection to make sure that we our species are not totally lost. We are collaborating with a network of conservation state agencies, NGOs, and law enforcement to integrate a response to the illegal trade. We're also partnering with BotSoc to establish volunteering initiatives and to help source funding. The bottom photo is just a way of where we're trying to also establish some reintroduction programs into South African national parks. And how can you help as BotSoc members? Be a member of BotSoc and crew volunteer programs, participate in iNaturalist and citizen science and using the apps such as iNaturalist. Be aware of plant pictures that you post on social media with locality information, because believe it or not, they are out there trolling and trying to find where the localities of these plants are. Try and know the difference between wildly collected plants and nursery cultivated plants. You can see that by the unique shape, large, they're often damaged and have unique markings. And if in any suspicious activity, please do not hesitate to contact the SAPS or Cape Nature with regards to Western Cape. And for more questions or more queries, please do not hesitate to contact me or Karina. I am based at Kirstenbosch, and Karina is based at the Kuru Desert Gardens. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. It's a great upgrade to have, and I'd encourage people, if they've got some time, to go back to our very first webinar on the topic in 2021, where we were just basically spelling out the issue. And of course, subsequently, we've had the implementation of the national, what's it, action, I always get the acronym wrong, the action plan for succulents, and it's actually a really great document and tool which has brought together all the stakeholders in the space to have measurable outcomes. And of course, BotSoc's been very instrumental, and I think something that we're going to be repeating in this webinar, and you've already put it out there in terms of the kind of help which is required. But of course, the financial help is also really good in terms of just from a consumables point of view. But like as these plants come in, we're always going to need more money for soil and trays and labeling material, and yeah, maybe other kind of help, like, you know, if there are some financial heavy hitters out there, to there's always going to be a need for additional people to do this work. But I think the framework is now there in terms of having people like yourselves, in additional to the stalwarts who were there in the beginning, who had to deal with this. So thank you very much, and we'll see what questions there are for you later. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so our next speaker is Zwelakhe Zondi. He's a researcher at SANBI, based up in Pretoria. And Zwelakhe's actually in the Philippines at the moment, presenting at the conference. And he pre-recorded this talk for us on PowerPoint, and I hope it's going to work. I tested it earlier. But another BotSoc supported project, but we're going to let Zwelakhe tell you all about what's going on in terms of a response to the far older poaching problem as pertaining to cycads. So give me a second and we'll see how this goes. Okay, so I'm getting several messages through that there is no sound coming through from this presentation. Let's see what happened.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zwelakhe Zondi. My presentation today will be on the use of microdot technology in cycad conservation and trade regulation. According to the IUCN Red List, cycads are considered to be the most threatened taxa globally. 78% of South Africa's encephalato species are threatened with extinction compared to the global average of 62%. Of these, 31% are classified as critically endangered compared to the global average of 17%. Another 4 species are endangered and 10 species are classified as threatened. Sadly, South Africa is home to 3 of the 4 extinct in the wild species, 2 of which have become extinct in the wild in the period between 2003 and 2010. Recent reports coming from Mpumalanga province and Limpopo province suggest that Encephalatos hinenai may be extinct in the wild in Mpumalanga, and Encephalatos dolomiticus may be extinct in the wild in Limpopo. All species of the genus Encephalatos are included in Appendix 1 of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which means trade for commercial purposes is prohibited. In South Africa, all species of the genus Encephalatos are included under the Threatened or Protected Species Regulations. What are the threats that are facing our cycads? These include the illegal collection of wild Encephalatos specimens for horticultural and traditional medicine purposes, which affects all Encephalatos species in South Africa and is the primary threat. Now, in an attempt to protect cycads and to curb illegal harvesting of these plants, a cycad biodiversity management plan was developed and gazetted for implementation in 2017. Objective 4 of the cycad biodiversity management plan states that there is a need to pilot studies on the use of microdot for marking of wild priority Encephalatos populations. This protocol was developed by Mr. Paramani Xaba and Mr. Divert Bosenberg, who then tested it at the Kirstenbosch National Botanical Garden. What are microdots? These are microscopic discs that contain unique information. They are said to be very effective in deterring theft and play a crucial role in the recovery and return of stolen goods, and this has been proven in the motoring industry worldwide. Microdots have a unique laser-etched code that can be stored on a national and worldwide verification database. The photo shows what a typical microdot would look like, and the one on the left shows one of the microdots that we deployed onto one of the priority populations in South Africa. Method and materials. So what we used is a 330 milliliter aerosol spray that contains microdots, and these microdots can be specified to include a heat-resistant adhesive glue, and also they can contain an influorescent dye. We also had to use a DSLR camera to capture the deployment of the microdot under the chain of custody protocol. We needed a measuring tape, cycadometer, whiteboard and whiteboard marker, scrubbing brush, Ziploc bags, alcoholic swabs, secateurs, and gloves. It is quite easy to apply these microdots. What you need to do is to clean the stem of the plant using a scrubbing brush. Once we are satisfied that the stem is clean, the microdots can be deployed easily using that aerosol spray, where we spray them onto the stem. It is advisable to spray every half meter along the stem for species that have arborescent stem. But for species that have underground stem, it is advisable to spray the whole plant. And also for species or for juveniles, it is advisable to spray the whole plant. If you look closely at the pictures on the right, you can see some shiny dots on these plants. Those are the microdots. However, with time, it will not be possible to see them because they blend in with the plant, and it's very impossible to see them with the naked eye. There are tools that we use to view these microdots, such as the handheld microscope, which also has a UV light so that we can be able to detect the inflorescent dye. The USB portable microscope is more useful in the lab, where you can be able to take photos of those microdots as shown in the picture on the bottom right. What is the chain of custody protocol? This is the order in which items of evidence have been handled. It is very crucial and important to prove that an item has been properly handled through an unbroken chain, as this is the requirement for it to be legally accepted in court as evidence. For more species-specific data, we're going to be looking at the populations that we've marked. We've marked Encephalatus eugene maresi, which is listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. This species has a restricted range, and there has been a significant collecting over the past 30 years. And based on plants in private collection, there is an estimation that the population has suffered more than 50% population reduction. You can see that we've conducted about 4 field trips for this species, and we managed to mark 311 stems, which is equal to 263 plants. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done because it was estimated to have 1,700 stems. The next species that was marked with the microdots is Encephalatus horridus, which is listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List. For this species, the exact number of plants is unknown, although several subpopulations have been visited regularly. There may be many unknown plants in the dash bush where Encephalatus horridus occurs. There has been evidence of substantial poaching in the last 10 years, and as recent as last month or early this year, there also has been poaching of this species. We've marked 4 populations, and the first population marked was on a national protected area where we marked 125 plants, which is equal to 145 individuals. I can say that this whole population was completely marked. The next population, which is population 2, was on a provincial protected area where we marked 11 individuals, which equals to 23 stems. For this particular population, we were quite disappointed because we were estimated that there are 110 individuals. However, when we did the field trip, we could only find 11. But there are suggestions that we might have missed more plants. The third population marked was on a private farm where we marked 17 individuals. The next population that was marked of the Encephalatus horridus is actually an unknown population according to reports, but due to recent poaching events that took place on this particular population, the provincial officials then requested us to come mark the plants with the microdots. In this population, we managed to mark 55 plants, which is equal to 66 stems. However, we did run out of microdots and just decided to do a population survey. In total, we managed to count 298 individuals in this population, and there is still more plants that we could see, and the plan is to go back and do more surveys for this population and also deploy more microdots. The next species marked was Encephalatus middleburgensis, which is a critically endangered species. For this population, there was an estimation of between 184 and 200 mature individuals. We conducted 2 field trips for one population where we marked 16 individuals on the first trip and 23 individuals on the second trip. Encephalatus milobegensis has declined continuously over the last 50 years due to poaching and disease. There are more populations that have been earmarked for marking, and we are planning to go and mark those plants with microdots. The next species on our list was Encephalatus msinganus, which is a critically endangered species. It was previously estimated that there were less than 200 adult Encephalatus msinganus plants occurring in a few scattered sites. However, the team could not mark a single plant during our field trip because the plants occur very high up on the mountain and one would need very exceptional abseiling skills. So in the next batch of photographs, I'm going to demonstrate to you guys what kind of habitat these plants are occurring and the difficulty that it comes with. So this is the Msinga mountain where the plants occur, and we're at the top looking down. As you can see in the yellow circle, there's a cycad sticking out just on the face of the mountain. There's another cycad where I took a risk so that I can get this photo where I jumped onto another rock. It was quite risky, but I did manage to take a photo. There's another plant stuck between 2 rocks, very impossible to get to. And there's other 2 plants that we could see. Seeing that it is difficult to reach the plants, the team then decided perhaps it might be useful to work from below the mountain, working our way up, because it's less dangerous than working from the top of the mountain and looking down. So the team decided to walk around, to drive down the mountain and perhaps try to work their way up. Little did we know that even at the bottom of the mountain, it's impossible to get to the mountain because the bush is so dense. You'd actually need a bulldozer to clear the bush so that we can get to the plants. However, we did manage to take photos of the plants we could see from a distance, and we counted plus minus 26 individuals, which are represented by those red and yellow circles. Just to touch on local beliefs, when we're driving, we noticed that there's a lot of plants that were planted in the yards or in the gates of the yards. And according to the locals, this plant is used to ward off evil spirits. It is called in isiZulu isigqiki somkhovu, which is loosely translated to the zombie's pillow. Basically meaning if the zombie is sent to come cast an evil spell in this yard, it will not do that. Instead, it will come and sleep next to the cycad, and hence the zombie's pillow. There's more plants that we could notice in the yards, and they are very much protective over these plants because we tried to approach one of the owners to perhaps go to the plant and try sex it, but the owners were not really happy about that. So the plants are really, really protected, and they're really sacred to this community. More pictures of cycads that were harvested and planted in the yards for cultural beliefs. Thank you very much. I hope that was very useful. To end off my presentation, I'd like to thank the Botanical Society of South Africa for funding this project, and the Scientific Authority technical team that's housed at SAMBI for all the support.
Okay, thank you, Zwelakhe. I might have hit one slide too early, but the whole project was a response to one of the targets out of the cycad biodiversity management plan, being to try this microdotting process. And it's just another example of how BotSoc has responded directly to a national plan with an action, and that's similar to the work that's been done currently with the Ehlanzeni biodiversity management plan for medicinal plants, which is being implemented by a BotSoc SANBI team, and several other partners up north. Okay, so that was really interesting, and I'm now going to share. I think also what's nice about that is just, it shows the field work which is required to get to it. It's not just a desktop exercise, and how people like us, plant people, relish getting into the field to collect this information and try and implement solutions. And on that topic, our next speaker is the Custodians of Rare and Endangered Wildflowers, or crew intern, Hafeez Sonday. And while Emily and Karina have been doing their best to make sure that the confiscated plants are taken care of, and Hafeez and Ishmael and team have been out in the field monitoring some of the species, the conophytum species, and also looking to collect material for ex situ conservation to ensure that we've got a representative sample of them in the gardens. Okay, so let's share the video.
Hi everyone, I'm Hafeez Sonday. Today I'll just be talking to you guys a bit about the monitoring that we do in the field with regards to the succulent poaching project. So you all know conophytums are a genus of dwarf succulents. They belong to the family Isoaceae. They're quite variable. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes. A lot of them are not even bigger than a 50-cent coin. And they really occupy these very interesting, discrete niche habitats, which are quite interesting to see. So a lot of our monitoring is kind of in the hotspot of the poaching, and it's really from the Kudze area right up to Steenkop, and that's where we find a quite concentration of poaching happening. And then of course it's quite a broad collaboration that we have going on. And funding was made available through the IUCN SOS grant. And it's a type of catalytic funding which allows things to happen at a much quicker pace. And so the Botanical Society would really appreciate their help in facilitating the procurement of all the necessary equipment that we need for the field monitoring, as well as ex situ equipment, pots and growing medium and trays and things of that sort, to really help with the crisis at hand. Sorry, this is just a video. I'll explain that. How we monitor is we use literature, historical records, everything that we have to locate populations. And then we go out, we do our line transects, we count along the line transects left and right. And then we have extra team members kind of circling the vicinity around the line transect to count plants that's outside the reach of the transect. And we kind of put that together to get a relatively good population estimate. But sometimes that isn't the case. For instance, we actually hiked up, I think it is around Steenkop area, we hiked up a mountain, and we actually had to hike during a sandstorm. And this is what that video actually is. These are the conditions that we had to monitor. So of course, it was like impossible to take out a measuring tape and field site sheets to actually do the monitoring. So what we decided to do is the four of us walked up the mountain in kind of like a row. It's like a clip copy. That's relatively, yeah, relatively high. But so we kind of walked up in a row 2.5 meters apart. And we took as many pictures of the plant that we were looking for all the way to the top. And we kind of consolidated that that numbers to get a rough estimation of what that population was looking like, which was quite interesting because we could have never done monitoring like we usually do in that that wind. And then, for instance, you get Conophytum belusi. They really enjoy the cliffs, growing in the cliffs, and sometimes that can also be quite treacherous, but really fun to do. And then, as you can see, the Conophytum in the left-hand side there, it's not even a centimeter big yet. And so they're quite cryptic, they're quite small, and not really easy to find. So it's quite challenging to do the monitoring sometimes. And then this is what we call a poacher's den in the field. It's usually littered with rubbish and a couple of small mammal carcasses nearby. And yeah, usually when we see this, we know that the farm or the piece of land that we're on, we're bound to see some digging up and scratching of plants because poachers were on site. And then, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. We also find some really interesting things along the way. Of course, driving to these remote locations and traveling like that far, it doesn't feel all that amazing to monitor just 2 plants, although they are extremely critically endangered plants. But we also do record data as we go. We take pictures of everything that's flowering and that interests us along the way. And we use iNaturalist to record this data, and it can really be informative in range distribution of plants, how far plants actually occur, not just from literature, but what actually is there in the file. And most of the time, the two do they do line up. But even if so, now and then you get range extensions, which are pretty cool. So a senior pygmaea is a dwarf daisy, and I was very fortunate to find this one still in bloom. It's quite rare, and this is the only flowering observation of ironat that I took. I think it was about a year ago. And then Hymanthus deciphilus is also quite a rare Hymanthus. Not many pictures. I couldn't find any pictures actually of the flower. I just found a botanical drawing. And then the also rare Brunsvigia pulchra. We actually went to go monitor a Conophytum species on this farm, and on our way out, we got the farmer, and he was telling us about a really interesting plant that he saw. And we actually went to go check it out, and it turns out it was the rare Brunsvigia pulchra, which is a very delightful surprise after a day of monitoring. And then also the Hymanthus crispus. This is quite an interesting pink form of the plant because they're usually red. They look very much, the flowers look similar to Hymanthus pubescens or namaquensis. Yeah. And then this is just a picture of a Conophytum, Ictacum cruciatum. They can be quite cryptic, sometimes impossible to find. We really drive ourselves crazy on all fours looking for these plants, but when we find them, it's really such a joy. And because like this is a prime example that you probably won't find this plant unless it's flowering. So that is actually sometimes what we do. A lot of the time, we actually try and target our monitoring times with the plant's flowering time, which makes it so much more easier to find them compared to just these pebble-like looking plants. Yeah. And then this is just some other cool succulent species that have also sometimes been on poachers' radar. And the Campseras. This is some way up north, closer to Port Nolloth side. And then this is actually a really cool cave that I stumbled across looking for Conophytum tantalum inexpectatum. And it was, I really enjoyed finding this cave. I actually spent like 10 minutes just sitting in that cave and just experiencing the moment. It was really something amazing. And then, oh, this is Strumeria Merx mulleriana. quite a race through media. You find them in watercourses, granite soils. They like deep soils, and we just happen to. Actually, we didn't happen to stumble across this. So we were really bummed out after monitoring a site that had just been hit, and there were still lots of remnants of plants being pulled out and stuff, and we could see the population was actually so much more than what we had just counted. And we were kind of down in the dumps, and while we were trekking through the veld, we actually found this radio one, which kind of lifted our spirits, which was just heaven sent. It is really nice. Yeah, so there is the downsides and there are the upsides, and you kind of can't focus on the negative. You have to keep positive and fight the good fight, of course, because yeah, there's just no way around it. These are our plants, and we care about them dearly. Thank you for your time, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, goosebumps, and also from my side, a little bit of envy for people like Hafeez getting to see some of these plants in situ that very few of us will ever get the opportunity to do. Okay, so that's the end of the formal presentations. Emily and Karina, do you want to come on and maybe, I see Karina's already answered the question in the chat from Charles Sturton. Prof. Charlie, nice to have you online. Anything that comes to mind based now on the three presentations together in terms of, you know, the picture for our plants? I think let's go with Dr. Du Toit.
Thanks, Rupert. Apologies about that. Yeah, so I think one thing Hafeez touches on and in the previous presentation is how monitoring some of these species is really challenging, and it's very costly to get around to these to monitoring these plants. They can be incredibly cryptic, hidden in tiny cracks. We always say a good investment when you do our line of work is to get invest in a good pair of knee pads, because you will always be on your hands and knees quite a lot. But it is very rewarding to find them. It's a very complicated space, the illegal wildlife trade. It's constantly changing, and we're always trying to understand what the market wants and, you know, why they're suddenly going for this plant now and not that plant. So it's a very dynamic space, and the numbers keep chopping and changing. It's very difficult to predict where things are going. So the field monitoring is really a crucial part of us trying to understand, even if we're not seeing those plants come in confiscations, if we can see it's been targeting out in the wild, then we know that, you know, people are going for that. So the field monitoring plays a crucial role in understanding what's going on.
Cool. Emily, I think also just in terms of your experience so far with having to count and quantify and plant, you know, like what's that like?
Yeah, it's very overwhelming. I think the word overwhelming is sometimes an understatement of what we deal with. Just to put it into perspective, in March and April alone, just at one of our facilities, we received 70,000 plants. And, you know, there is, like we said, we triage the plants to try and prioritize which ones we plant when, in terms of their regulator status. So the ones that are most, you know, closer to the verge of extinction, we try and plant those first. But also when you get 20,000 critically endangered plants come in, it's still a bit hard to, you know, to actually, we just don't have the manpower to plant all these things out. It's very time consuming. And to look after these plants. And like we said, we don't always understand what these plants' individual growing needs are. So it's a lot of resources in need and a lot of space. And we just, the sad fact is that we've lost a lot of plants are dying in boxes because we just can't get around to planting them. We don't have enough trays or soil or just space to put them. And we're very nervous to put them outside where they could be exposed and people could potentially steal them. So it's a very, very difficult, you know, with dealing with the plants that are coming in and trying to prioritize which ones get saved and which ones don't.
Yeah, cool, thank you. So I just want to go back to the chat. The questions are from Azar Tabele around cycads, and is there any simple method that one can use to identify cycads? Not really. It's like most plants, they've got certain characteristics, and there are ID guides and also other things, ID guides and keys that are available. And it is, you are allowed to breed cycads, and if you're interested in that, there are quite a few cycad societies in various of our cities, and they are the best. If you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely look up your cycad society, because if they're good, then they'll have all their permits and understand. But I see Karina wants to answer the question live. Karina, go for it.
No, sorry, Rupert, because you were answering it live. That's why I indicated that.
Oh,
sorry
okay.
about that.
Okay, no. So did I miss the spot? Let me know. Okay, cool. If not, that's great. I'm just looking in the chat to see if there's anything that we missed. I think we're relatively good. So Emily and Karina, are there any kind of closing thoughts from your side that you want to put forward?
Thanks, Rupert. Yeah, I think first of all, we definitely want to thank BotSoc for their amazing support in all of this. And if anyone does want to know more information or, you know, be able to help out for various things, then definitely get in contact with BotSoc. We are looking at getting some volunteer programs established at some of the gardens, just to help us dealing with some of the confiscations and helping care and simple things like weeding and removing seeds and stuff like that. It's very simple, but it's just stuff that we just don't have the manpower to get around to doing, but it's critically needed. So if anyone wants to help with that, then definitely get in contact with BotSoc, because we will be starting some volunteer programs to do that. And then I think finally from our side is, if anyone sees any suspicious activity when you're out, maybe in the field, people walking around, I mean, I know this describes us walking around with bags and spades, just be aware that someone could be up to something suspicious, and to report that to the relevant authorities.
Cool. Emily, from your side?
I want to say something. Sorry, we had to share the same office, so that's why I had to mute myself. I would just like to thank everyone for humoring us and listening to our presentations. It's not all doom and gloom. Like Karina said, we are really appreciative of BotSoc and BotSoc members with their donations and volunteering. So as echoing as what Karina said, if you have the time, you can go assist at the Karoo Desert Gardens. I know Karina will always need some extra hands. And if you see something, say something. There are various studies that are pilot studies that are going to start off. This is a new area that we need to tackle, and we all can't do it by ourselves, so we need everyone's hands to help and participate.
Cool. I'm going to, Karina, if you can go for that interesting question from Anthony Walton in the chat. That's a question that a lot of people who would like to help would know the answer to. So go for it.
Thanks for thanks for the question. Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something we are starting to expand into and look into. We definitely do need help of other succulent growers or nurseries in terms of a variety of ways to help us deal with this problem. But our first hurdle that we need to get over, and hopefully we'll have clarity on this within the next week or so, is one of the biggest challenges we face is that the plants come to us are evidence in a court case, and there has to be a chain of custody followed. And, you know, we're not allowed to get rid of those plants until the case is over. But we are trying to speak to the authorities and see if there is a way that we can work around this, that maybe we create sort of like custodianship agreements with specific nurseries who can house some of our plants as mother stock and grow from that for the market. So we are exploring that. So just hold on to that thought for a few days, and hopefully we'll be able to have some clarity on that because we are going to be speaking to the authorities next week.
Okay, cool. Out of the press. I think I'm just going to repeat this one question for those people who haven't looked at the Q&A, is that Charlie Sturton was asking if there's any genetic sequencing being done on the collections. And Emily's responded and said that a project is being proposed to try and get that done. And this is important to know, as the second part of Emily's response. We are still trying to understand the succulents and how they grow. And it's interesting, you know, how little we actually know about so many of our plants, and that just shows how much we've still got to do as BotSoc members. So that's the end of that part of the webinar. But we've got a special guest. I'm going to ask Simpiwe. Oh no, he's just disappeared. I don't know if load shedding has eaten him. So we've got Simpiwe Madladla, who's the curator of Huntam Online, but like I said, he might have been a victim of load shedding. So let's see if we can get him back on again. Just give me a second. Okay, I've got hold of Simpiwe and he should join us in the next minute or so. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I'm just checking to see if there's any other questions. I think we did well in terms of that. Also, Marianne Lovell had asked what caused this sudden increase interest in succulents. And second question, do you think the poachers are knowledgeable about what they are stealing? And essentially, it looks like they are for ornamental use, and that a complex combination of social media and online influences, as well as COVID restrictions, meaning that international collectors have started to use local people as collectors. That's kind of fueled the trade. Okay, let's see. I don't see some PWA coming on. Okay, cool. Right. You heard that from Simpiwe himself. So we do have a news flash from Antam. Okay, so we seem to be having an issue getting Simpiwe on. So what I might do is get him to record what he had to say, and we'll append it as a link to this webinar. I want to thank all the speakers, so that's Zwelakhe, Hafeez, and Karina, and also Emily for an excellent laying out of the issue, and also very good to have a decent idea of what we can do going forward. Thank you, you two. And also send regards to the rest of the threatened species team over there that are busy trying to sort out these things as we speak. I've got a final thing that I want to share on my side. I'm taking a bit of a break for spring because, you know, it's gonna be a big spring. So August and September, you'll be having some variety in terms of the presenters for the webinars. But if you look at these images here, it might give you a bit of a clue as to who the next presenter is. And we'll leave it at that. But thank you everyone for joining us. It's been awesome, and go out and have fun and contribute wherever you are, as we normally do as BotSoc people.